Right. Good afternoon, everybody. It's really nice to see you all here. My name's Jez Clark. Currently the CEO and one of the co-founders of Eden Smith. We're a pure specialist data staffing business. And originally 6 years ago when we incorporated, we managed to position ourselves as the exclusive staffing partner to the conference. What we wanted to do was to bring some information about the talent pool, the market itself, give some information about what was going on, skills in demand, job functions and families, which are relevant, well relevant then, more relevant now, and what are relevant for the future. But also to talk about some of those challenges, what everybody's been facing. If you're a business that's been recruiting and finding it really, really tough, we do understand that. And also if you're a job seeker, how well to best position yourself. Today's presentation really, I would say, is probably more focused on potential companies that have been recruiting and how we should be looking at that, considerations for a potential economic downturn. But also if you're a job seeker, then really what I think you should be taking from this presentation today is this is what companies are doing, and therefore this is something that you can be considering as a job seeker. So I thought I'd kick the presentation off with some of the standard stuff. Every year we do come to the event and we talk about benchmarking, market statistics for certain job families and roles, which we're desperate to keep as simple as possible because unfortunately through innovation over the last 5 or 6 years, what you would have seen is a specific set of job families which have then iterated into lots of different job titles, which then makes it increasingly very, very difficult to recruit people because if you're a business you're not actually aligned with the market and what the talent pool has to offer you. So been a lot of things we've looked at, and last year I think it's been really, really challenging for everybody on both sides of the fence. So I'll just kick off with some market conditions and stats and some headlines. I'll probably talk for about 15 to 20 minutes and then I'll just open it up to the floor. If anybody's got some questions, we can have 10 minutes of Q&A and we can go from there, and hopefully there'll be some key takeaways for everybody in the room that will help you for 2023. So, what are some of these headlines? Right, so the job market does remain increasingly difficult. As a recruiter in tech for over 25 years and my business partner, this is about as hard as it gets. You have a new set of skills forming and requirements of businesses, you have new technology, you have new job roles and functions. One of the hardest parts about that is that companies are on a different part of their data journey. So whereas 5 or 6 years ago we had a massive demand for data science, all of a sudden there's a bit of a backtrack now because we're now looking for people that do data governance, data quality, and we're looking at new platforms and architecture. Well, of course, you know, the talent pool catches up with the market demand, but it's never really there. And then when the market changes direction, that gives us another set of challenges to deal with. So, you know, that coupled with some economic uncertainty for the future, we've got to sort of like think about, well, what do we do today? How do we address that moving forward? What sort of planning should we do? And there's a couple of reminders in this presentation about what talent strategy is about. And the reason that I actually labeled this, you know, good talent strategy doesn't default to recruitment, and that's because what I see is that there's 80% effort made in recruitment and only 20% effort made in the rest of what builds a talent strategy, and that is the key issue. So if you can walk away from here today thinking we'll get to 50-50, then we'll probably be in a better place next year. It's vital to continue your investment in upskilling your workforce. And you know, you're trying to find people that potentially don't have all of the skills, and this is distracting you from actually looking inward and actually upskilling your own workforce. It can sometimes be a lot cheaper to do it that way, and obviously employment engagement then goes up. So therefore that impacts your retention, and of course you then start to build succession. This is a snowball effect that happens. You've got to start thinking about it in this way. Pay rates we are seeing continuing to rise. Last year when I spoke, obviously post-pandemic, they were skyrocketing. Fortunately, we are starting to see a bit of a plateau across certain job functions, but not all of them. And this is causing everyone a few problems. But we are seeing the softest increase since last year, and I can show you that in a second. For job seekers, this is the time to do personal development. So, you know, if you're not currently working or you don't have employment, now's the time to be really looking at the market, what it's doing, what skills are required, and go and learn some of that stuff yourself, because this means a lot to potential employers. if a potential employer has been looking for someone for 6 months and all of a sudden they see someone that's actually really invested in personal development, that's a win. You're already ahead of the game. So please do consider that. A really basic stat here. Obviously, I've taken research from a number of different sources. I look at KPMG's reports and PwC and Gartner and all these places to pull together. You know, this market's not slowing down. We're about 250 billion global net worth at the moment, and we're thinking that it's going to get to, well, the predictions are 568 billion. So, you know, this isn't going to change in the foreseeable. So we've got to address that. So what we'll look at now is UK vacancies versus staff availability. And what we mean there is how many people are recruiting versus how many people are available in the market for you. And this is a great graph because, I should just come out a second, you can see on the left there the total number of vacancies is very high post-pandemic. It hit its peak. And at that time it hit its peak when I was presenting last year, we were at the lowest amount of staff availability. So the cavern that created, this is where there was a huge issue. And you know, the best recruitment companies in the world are not going to solve that problem. That's like a team collective that's going to do that. However, what we are seeing this year is that the vacancy numbers are coming down slightly, the staff availability is going up, and therefore we're starting to close that gap into the medium where, if you look at that central line across there, that's when we've got a nice level of people moving around in the market, and it makes things a lot easier. So that's where we're seeing things, and I don't think that's going to change. Obviously, an economic downturn could be a big factor of what that looks like next year when we're back. Hopefully we will be back. The permanent and temporary placement index, this is the number of placements that are being made any given time. I mean, look at the pandemic, what happened. I mean, it was unbelievable. You know, it's just, it's hard to think back about what that was like. But fortunately, we see the big increase where companies have bounced back in 2021, and now it's starting to come down. And I think the reason that that's coming down at the moment is been for a number of reasons. Some of that is to do with the fact that we can't find the people. Some of that is a change of direction in what businesses are doing in their data journey. So they might be changing direction, going back to that, to the foundations. And some of it basically just has to do with, you know, operating models of companies. They've been changing a lot over the last 12 months. This causes a lot of uncertainty when people are moving around in the market. So, you know, all things considered, I'd say that I don't think it will go down that much more from what we're seeing at the moment. In fact, if anything, I'm seeing a slight increase as we come up to the end of the year. In the recruitment industry, that's expected because people are spending the last amounts of their budget so they can get a new one signed off for the future. And there's also a lot of people that are actually completing their degrees, so we see a fresh amount of talent come out in the market at that point in time. So we'll see what that looks like again next year. One of the ones that always raises lots of eyebrows in these presentations is salaries. I love talking about salaries. Normally big gasps. There's quite a lot of data on this slide. So this is permanent average salaries, so base salaries only, no compensation, no OTEs, anything like that. The blue line represents 2021. Again, these are average, these aren't the top 10% of earners, which I will show you. And the green line is 2022. Now the Chief Data Office, I don't want you to be misguided by that statistic, because what it's seeing there is that actually in the Chief Data Office that they're being paid less across the average. That's not the case. What's happened is that we have job titles. So we have the Chief Data Officer, or the CDO, what you want to call them, typically an exec layer. But actually there's a lot of heads of data, whether it's through engineering or architecture or data science, something like that. But actually they're responsible for the whole business unit for data. So sometimes they're paid slightly less, and therefore it's actually impacted what this looks like. However, we see architecture remaining solid. Data engineering. Has anyone tried to hire data engineers this year? How'd you get on with that? I love it. Loads of like, shaky heads. Yeah, it was the same for us trying to find them. Massive, you know, we saw a big spike in the average cost of a data engineer, currently sitting at around 80,000 with some of a 4 to 6 years experience, which is a lot of money. However, we're starting to see that tail off now. This was the same story for data science 5 years ago, because it just took a massive spike and then it's plateaued out, again, because companies are changing what they're doing. The other areas of increase where we're seeing, which as expected because of transformation and journeys, data governance. People are looking at the governance, people are looking at the data management, people are looking at data quality. Because once we get that bit right, then we can go and do all the fun stuff at the end of it and gain those insights that you want to. So obviously, as expected, there's some slightly small hikes, 10%, 7% since last year. Very interesting one here, 25% increase in the average perm salary across machine learning. And I think that's a lot of that to do with a lot of engineering, a lot of requirement for data scientists to have a lot of engineering capability as well, backgrounds in software engineering, as well as doing the data science stuff. Data quality on the up by 18%, and visualization. There's a lot of demand at the moment to get. Let's see what we've got at the moment. Let's get the data in a good place, and let's visualize some of that and do some analytics around it, so we can actually do a quick POC in the business to get the data culture up. So that's the perm average salaries. We look at the top 10% of earners. Now look at the chief data office. We've seen an increase there from like 200 grand up to 230k nearly on a base salary for the top 10%. Interestingly, architecture's gone up. So we've seen people being paid up to 130k for senior data architecture, just as a base salary. Remember, this is not including any bonuses or anything like that. And engineering, actually, it's just come down slightly. So all of this stuff, if you think about recruitment companies, what we do and what we look at, it's all like a barometer to what's going on in the market. You can clearly see it just from sort of demand, supply and demand all the time. No real other massive movers in there. Again, around data governance, 12% increase, and data products. The data product owner role been quite an interesting one this year, because you know, everyone's heard of product management, but I think there's now, for the last year or so, it's like, no, we're going to give people that responsibility to actually own that product within the business. It's going to be data product management. So you see that it's actually, technically it's the same skill set, but it's with the data head put on top. But it's big in demand at the moment, so it's a good market to get into. And then we've got statistics around contracting. We haven't really seen that much movement around contracting. When I did the research on this, because I take it from about 6 or 7 different sources, plus our own data on our own database, so we've probably got about 40,000 data professionals on the database at the moment. And we do place a lot of contractors who are working on quite critical projects. I was actually expecting to see engineering fly up through the roof, you know, purely because there's no people out there on perm, but it really didn't. It wasn't that high at all. See governance come down. I thought that was quite strange on contracting, but I think that's because people got wind that actually governance and data management was a good area to get into, and that's where the demand was. So we're seeing more perm people take jobs. And you also have to consider IR35. If you don't know what IR35 is as a contractor, it's Inland Revenue 35. It's basically a tax law for people who are taking advantage of HMRC's lovely tax ruling. And what it's basically said is they can't now get the benefits if you're a limited company contractor and you can't sit in a business for years and not pay any tax, basically. So there isn't really that much incentive now to go and run your own business as a contractor, unless you're prepared to pay roughly the same amount of tax as you would as a permanent employee. And that, I think, is exactly why we're seeing what we're seeing at the moment. Not too much rise. I wanted to look at some of the existing talent hotspots. For those that work for a global business or those that have travelled here, just to see what's going on out there at the moment. So the existing talent hotspots, we see India, in Bangalore. The colour represents the kind of level of talent, so the experience that the talent has. You can see the bigger the circle, the more talent there are in these hubs. Bangalore, we've got Tokyo and Delhi, Sao Paulo. London is in there, interestingly, which I thought was quite insightful, because I didn't actually expect that, because obviously it's quite hard for us to find people at the moment, but there is quite a good hub in London. And this isn't just data people. The problem is that you'll find this a lot. Data people get lumped in with the IT community. Very, very, very different skill set, very different type of person, in our opinion, is what we've learned from it anyway. So therefore it's quite hard to pull out, well, where are all the data people outside of the technology landscape? So existing talent hotspots there, and emerging ones that are coming through. Mexico City, we've got Budapest in there, Buenos Aires, so a lot in South America. I didn't expect that. I can't give you the answers as to why we think that is. Often we look at nearshoring, offshoring. We expect to see, you know, quite a lot of talent hubs in Eastern Europe, etc. But it's not what I've really seen this year. So quite interesting stats, and obviously Australia up there as well. Whereas I always think that actually they're normally from a technical perspective and building talent, our experience has been that they're always slightly behind, if I'm honest. But you know, interesting stats to say the least. So there's some market stats. The presentation will be shared with everybody, but I just wanted to, you know, it's something that we always do. I think you should bench that, you should use that if you're a business. It does take quite a lot of time to put this information together. It's just not something that's been plucked out of the air, obviously, and it's, you know, obviously exactly why we're here. So I wanted to remind everybody of what a talent strategy is. If we can't fix the problem by just doing recruitment, what are the other things that we should be doing? Anybody in human resources who works closely with recruitment, the company, I would expect to at least know most of this stuff. But if we remind ourselves what they are, to put a proper talent strategy together, it's not just all about talent acquisition. That's just the bit where you go and find people. The bit where you retain your people and you look after your people and you upskill your people, which prevents talent acquisition, that's the bit that we need to be focused on at the moment. So every business should be looking at its business goals and what that context looks like. You need to think about what is it we want to achieve in 3 years, 5 years, and then go, well, what people do we need to do that? And then that forms the baseline of your organisational design. I see far too many org designs that look like basically a blueprint that they've pulled off of Google, which says we should have this, 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 and this, and this is what makes up a good data team. It's not actually the case. It needs to be very, very relevant and very, very tailored to your needs. Your employee value proposition. Does the market know how you reward your people? Do you have a reward scheme in your business? Do you offer good benefits? Are there lots of other free benefits that you could get that don't cost the business money? Are there other things that you can do that support well-being? These all add up or basically contribute to your EVP. And your work environment and culture. You know, the change in operating model over the last 2 years post-pandemic has caused an awful lot of challenges for people finding people and for people finding new jobs. You know, where I have a story right now. I know someone very dear to me who has literally lived and breathed the company that she works for the last 7 years. And literally 3 months ago they said, you have to be in the office 2 days a week. She has a 2-hour a day each way round trip, and now she's looking to leave. And all I'm seeing is a completely well-engaged individual who's about to walk out the door, cost the company a fortune to re-recruit and retrain, and you know, you don't know if they're going to live your values or not. So this is the sort of stuff you need to be thinking about. How do you do that? Talent acquisition. Well, how will you find your specialist people, and how specialist are they? Some are easier to find than others. As we know, in this space, in this community, it's really, really difficult. So, you know, the talent acquisition part, which I will go on to next and show you what does make good talent acquisition, only literally is one component of what a proper strategy is about for talent. Your employee branding. If you're a business that If someone is looking in from the outside and they can't see what your business is all about, it's very, very difficult for them to engage on the journey. Statistics will tell you that 60 to 70% of people will actually make their decision about whether they want to engage with you before they even apply for a job. You know, so you've really got to work hard on this. You need to be very friendly, open. You need to project your values, your culture. It needs to be, you know, the messaging needs to be across multiple channels, not just whacking something up on LinkedIn or a few words on your website that speak great things about your business. That's not how it happens. What happens is a lot of thought and effort goes into that kind of work so that people understand and they get a feeling. So employee branding is key. Learning and development. If you're a business that doesn't actually have an investment plan or a training plan, so that people can see that you're actually trying to do something for them, that is a key part to your talent strategy, because it basically will help you again with retention, mentoring schemes, coaching schemes, two very different things, but also equally very important. And then performance management, right? So I say performance management. I actually prefer the term performance enablement. You know, enabling people to perform is much better than looking at key statistics of how someone's performed. And this is kind of a bit of a step change here, which I think should be part of any good talent strategy. So it's all of these components that make up, I believe, or will help you to build the right team for your business. And then it's about how do you go about that. This is how we do recruitment. And this isn't just recruiters that do it like this. We have to recruit for ourselves. And the interesting thing is that there are recruitment companies that find recruiters. They're called rec to recs. And I wonder one day whether there'll be a rec to rec to rec that's still trying to find people for you. So, it has to stop somewhere, right? If you look at these things and you put these into your business, you should, I would say, be a little bit, 50% more effective about building your teams for the future and the way you go about recruitment especially. Encourage your employee referrals. If you don't have a referral scheme in your business, you need to have one. People need to be rewarded for finding good people for you. And they will do that because we have that quite a lot. And the expectations aren't always that high. They want to do it. If your values are good, your culture's good, they'll do it for you. You have to prioritise the candidate experience. So make those interactions memorable and engaging and different. These first steps, what is the communication? Is it sent by an email, say welcome to the recruitment process? Is it by the agency that you're working with as a supplier? Do they really represent you in the best way that they should? If their communication to the market isn't exactly as you wish it, you want it to be, or you're using multiple suppliers, I can guarantee you that the message is inconsistent. It's really important. Build great role profiles and align with the market. Going back to my other point, there's far too many iterations of what a function and the skill set requirement is across the industry. If it's data architecture that you want someone to do, let's call the person a data architect, because fundamentally that's what they're going to be doing. Or if it's engineering, or if it's data science, we don't need data whisperers and, data consultant, whatever that means. No one really knows what it means. And the problem is you'll give that to a supplier who's a technical recruiter, and they look at it and go, well, I've got no idea what that is anyway. And then you'll blame the supplier at the end of it for not really finding you great people. Make sure that on your JDs, value proposition from your business is there. They can get a feeling for your culture. When was the last time you reviewed yours? HR do tend to build a template for job descriptions, and quite rightly so, because otherwise you'd be rewriting them every day. But actually you do need to change them to suit the role that you're trying to recruit. So have a look at those and make sure they're attractive and interesting. Talk about the journey that you're on, the data journey. Think like a marketeer. I love this one. People are spending far more time researching before they come and see you. So that's why all of the other things I've spoken about is key. Remote and hybrid working is absolutely a key factor for you as a business now. It's like 50 to 60% want fully remote. A large 20-25% want hybrid working models. The work-life balance that people have benefited from in the last 2 years, when we talk to people and the amount of people that we talk to every day, and we've got a fairly big team, it's a very clear message. So if your business is going down that route, like that person I know, their company she works for, actually not a good one. They're starting to lose a lot of people now from the business because of it. Make your interview process fit for purpose. Ask relevant questions. Don't use the cookie cutter approach of let's do these competency-based questions for 5. That's not really working for you. Less visits. People are more available, and get your stakeholders or more of your stakeholders on these calls or at these interviews. You do not need to schedule 4 interviews over 4 to 5 weeks. You may as well just forget about recruiting, because when it's a skills scarce market, that doesn't work, and we see it all the time, and it's really difficult. Technical testing, one of my favourites. Let's send said candidate a technical test at home, and they can complete it and come back to us in a week. Well, they've probably got 5 of those technical tests sitting at home, and they might have children, or they might just have a really busy life. Which one are they going to choose? Is it the one where you spent time doing all of your employee value proposition, your messaging is good, or are they going to just pick it for the sake of it or not complete it at all? Half the time they don't complete it at all. And we lose lots of very good people because of that. And seek and embrace diversity. We're doing it ourselves as a business at the moment. We've connected up with like-minded females. We've got a very, very diverse, inclusive network, and you'll get new ideas from that. You'll get much more employee engagement, and you'll attract a much wider pool of candidates as well. So it's just one of those little things that we should be doing. Great statistic here. Talked about remote working. 78% of HR professionals surveyed. Flexible schedules and remote working are effective ways to retain people and save you money. Very important. So what are we going to do in economic downturn? Here's a quick recap, because I know I'm running out of time. Why do people leave? Well, they leave because they're not learning. Yeah. no career path framework, lack of mentoring or coaching. They leave because the environment's toxic. Yeah, the culture doesn't match the values that you said you had. They leave because there's a poor operating model, so no longer does the hybrid model or the in-the-office model work for them. They leave because there's lack of reward. You don't recognise what they're doing well. Poor leadership, so people saying, you know, do as I say and not as I do. And they're not engaged with the vision. If you're a business and you don't talk about the vision, then you really should be, because people need to understand how their contributions contribute to the team, and the team contributes to the overall goal. And this is all a snowball. So what are we going to do in a downturn? Well, my view is that you need to look after your key people right now more than ever. Whatever it is that you might be doing or you might not be doing, you need to think about, how am I going to keep this person working for my business over the next couple of years, or the next year, or the next 5 months, whatever it might be. How are you going to address ongoing retention? If you don't have a retention plan, if you don't run exit interviews, if you don't do all that stuff and look at the data, then again, this is going to cause you an issue. Make your messaging and communication very honest and very transparent, especially in a downturn, because the first thing people think is that you're hiding something. This is where we go completely transparent. I certainly would, and I recommend this to anybody. If we start to hear that's happening over the next 3 months, this is key. Get your messaging open and transparent, and increase the number of channels. Focus on enabling people to perform, and be a compassionate leader. Probably my favourite one there. Focus on building those relationships with your teams right now. Listen more, speak less. Be understanding as a leader to people's situations, and empathise with that, and be very inclusive. So my key takeaways, I don't think we've got much time for questioning. So, a robust talent strategy doesn't default to recruitment. Remember that. Start doing some of the other stuff. Review and improve your talent acquisition tactics and process. There's lots of things that you can be doing there which will help you with this journey. Prioritise your employee engagement and analyse the retention data that you have. If you do have exit strategy or exit interview or anything like that, go and look at that. Prepare for this downturn, because we're expecting it. It doesn't need to be awful. And be compassionate leaders. Thank you very much. If there's a time for a question, I don't think there is one question, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Is it working? Thank you very much. What advice would you give in order to attract more diverse talent?
Really good question, actually. So there's lots of. So we had that challenge in our own business. What we've done is we've gone out. There's lots of networks out there that actually do promote diverse talent and communities. So like-minded females, you can engage with this network quite comfortably and easily through LinkedIn. There's networks like Northern Power Women. There are communities and conferences like this who invite a diverse community, but ultimately I would seek help where you can. If you're a business, definitely get someone who specialises in it, and then you'll go on the road. But if you're a company, you need an audit to see where you're at. You've definitely got to look where you're at, and then you need to understand. But one thing I will say about diversity or D&I is that it doesn't happen overnight. This is a journey that we all need to go on, and it will be something that we're all trying to strive to get to. You're welcome. Are we all good? No more questions? Well, thank you very much for listening. It's been lovely to see you. Thank you.